How you doing?
I'm good. Just
Good?
getting back into things. Just got back to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So.
Had a little break
Back to
after
work.
the games.
Yes,
Yeah,
a long break.
How was that break?
It was good. It was much needed.
Mhm.
This was the first year that I actually took that amount of time off. In the past, I would jump right back into training, but this year I was kind of forced to, with some injuries and health issues that I was dealing with, and just mentally, it was good, especially all that happened at the games.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of people, a lot of crowding, and so I just needed to step away.
Get your space.
Exactly.
I think a lot of athletes, they don't, a lot of people who don't compete at the level that you are, they underestimate how important it is to kind of get away, step away, recharge your batteries. But let's talk about your games experience if you don't mind. Obviously, it didn't go as planned in terms of, especially as a team. You went in there underdogs, you, Carrie, Bethany, went in there with high expectations. All three of you were potential podium, contenders. And then obviously for those two, they didn't get a chance to participate. But you're all staying in the same house. You found out that both of them couldn't compete. How did that affect you, knowing that they, teammates, people you trained with, weren't going to be in that next lane over?
Yeah. I mean, just when I moved to Vegas, training with Bethany and Carrie, the veterans of the sport, and I almost felt like they were like the moms of, they looked after me. We looked after each other.
Yeah.
And they're such big leaders. And I saw that especially at West Coast with how they just they carried the team and they kept us together. And so to not have them at the games, it was heartbreaking with Bethany, and then it almost seemed real. And then when Carrie wasn't able to compete, it was just like, holy crap, this is real. This is a lot more than it affected me a lot more than I thought it would.
Yeah, I mean, I remember talking after that swim event, and you're kind of emotional, and you kept on asking why me, and that's called survivor's guilt, and you were asking that question, but then you obviously you had a good support staff, Justin, Ashley were there, and talk about having them there, trying to get you level-headed. It's hey, you're there to compete at the game. At the end of the day, that's what you have to do. Talk about that process, having Justin there and you getting your mind right and going out there and competing.
So I think it was really important. So at first, luckily we had those days in between when we found out that they couldn't compete. And Cooper and Justin were really good at just being okay, Danielle, you can we understand this sucks for you, and be in that sucky bad feeling until this time, and then after that, you need to focus on you. You're still here for a reason. Just because they're not competing doesn't mean you didn't earn this opportunity. It was realize it sucks, but then move on. You can't dwell in it. They're going to be there waiting for you after. But right now, you still have to do what you can do and capitalize on that. Capitalize on your experience. So they were really good at not letting me dwell or feel pity for myself. And kind of remind me of the goal and remind me of why I was there. And it was just a good lesson. Immediately when we found out about Carrie, and then I was driven to the lake to go to the swim. I hadn't seen Justin or Cooper yet, and I walked up to him and I was just this is God's way of telling me to shape up. He left me alone because he's Danielle, I'm giving you this opportunity. There's not many opportunities like this, and I'm allowing you to have this because I easily could have been out too. You know what I mean? And so. And
you're almost prepared for that at one point, weren't you?
Yeah. At one point
it's just a matter of time. Exactly. I remember we had a conversation about that right after that first event. It's I don't know, this might be my last event.
Exactly. Because testing me all the time. I was you have to compete it's your last event.
So, you burst on the scene in 2019. And since that moment, you've had just a very weird games experience. 2019, obviously, you burst on the scene, but then you were part of the cuts. And then, you miss out in the top 10 because of, a positive test from someone that was in the top. So that kind of denied you that. Then 2020 comes around, COVID comes around. And so you had to do the online. And then you didn't make the cut there, but you're able to experience, the ranch on the demo team. And then this past year,
this is it.
This is it. It's a normalcy, right? A normal games, and then it was far from it. And talk about obviously you want that normal, but also talk about how I mean, you're a fighter because of that. You've dealt with a lot of adversity that other athletes haven't.
Yeah.
And I mean,
that's like the best way that me and Justin look at it is nobody else will go through what I went through this past game season. Like, there's nothing that's going to mimic that. I mean, unless same stuff happens next year, which we hope not.
We hope not.
Yeah. But like, I mean, even today, like Justin was just like, you seem different.
Yeah.
And he's like, it just seems like what you went through like changed you just so much for the better, and it did. Like that experience, not even just physically, but like mentally.
Sure.
You know, and it makes me want to set myself up even more for this upcoming season to just be stronger and never let anything knock me down physically or mentally.
Obviously, it was a tough games in terms of it wasn't where you wanted to finish, but you had a lot of things that other athletes didn't have to deal with.
Yeah.
But let's talk about some of that. I mean, what was your favorite event? I mean,
probably the pegboard one.
Okay,
yeah,
I can see that.
It was so funny because that one came out, and I think just the whole weekend, really, workouts would come out and like, this is gonna be a good one, and then like it wouldn't be great, and then the workouts where I was like, ooh, this one's gonna be rough. It would like go so much better.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was very much a roller coaster, but that pegboard one came out, and it's so funny. In training, all the time, he's like, Danielle, you need to do them. You need to do them. They're gonna come up, and I'm like, no, I don't want to. Our pegboard's sketchy. I don't want to risk it. And sure enough, they came up. So I was like, oh shit! Like I have not been practicing these at all. So to do well in that event, it was just fun. It was really actually fun.
Yeah. What was your least favorite event?
Oh man, I would say like looking at it on paper, like the deadlift one would be my least favorite.
Okay. Yeah.
Just because 275, like I couldn't deadlift that when I moved here in Vegas last year in like November.
Yeah.
I could not deadlift 275. So on paper, that one looks terrible, but like obviously with how I did, being of the only 4 to finish, amazing. The one that felt the worst, maybe that rope climb one.
Oh yeah.
It was just
on North Park. With
the rope climb and the cheese curd.
Yeah.
That one was pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
Maybe that one.
Okay. Let's talk about the one event. I mean, you didn't say it was your favorite event, but it was one that, I mean, you won.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you won the handstand.
Yeah.
Talk about your emotions on that, because it was like, you know, right around then is when people started realizing that you were being isolated. You know, like there was a gap there, and you killed that.
Yeah.
And against a really good field, a very good handstand walking.
Yeah.
And I think when you crossed that finish line, it's probably the most happy I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Seeing you, and talk about that moment. Like you almost had like a whole minute there where you're just celebrating, just soaking it all in.
Just like, it makes me feel so good thinking about it. Especially, so right before when all the athletes were in the back warming up, I had my own separate space.
Sure.
Someone came up to us and they were like, hey, actually the athletes get to practice on like miniature obstacles mimicking the ones on the competition floor. And they're like, athletes get a chance to go warm up, so like we're gonna get you back there. So we like ran around the whole building to get there, and we get there, and I'm like standing there, and we're like, okay, how's this gonna work? You know, because everyone's crowding all the obstacles, and I'm like, I know they don't want me to just like hop in there.
Yeah.
And J-Mac was like, pick one, and I'll get you on. I'll get you your own time. So I'm like, okay, cool, I want that one. So I go over there, and I'm like, okay, everyone's like, Danielle's gonna do a pass. So I like do a practice pass, and then some other athlete starts to go, and everyone's just yelling at her.
Oh wow!
Everyone's like, "Oh my! Like, don't go! Yeah. Danielle just went on those mats!" Like, and I'm just like, that was the most. I felt so like I had like that was the most isolated I felt, because everyone was just like, like everyone was like, "Oh my god, don't touch the mats," because Danielle just touched them, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh! Like, you're acting like I have some like disease."
Yeah.
It just like didn't feel good, and then they started to like spray the mats. So then the athlete went and like was slipping. So she's like, these mats are wet. So then I was like, oh my god, I'm like causing chaos. Yeah. And then I go and I slip on that and like fall, and Justin was so, and you know, like why am I? It was just dangerous.
Sure.
And so it was just very frustrating. And then kind of everyone's giving us dirty looks, like it's our fault. Yeah. And we were just like, we didn't ask for this. Like,
no.
And so I was like, I'm done. And so I was like, whatever, I don't need to warm up. I don't need to do this anyways. And went out and crushed it. And I just like felt really good to do that. Just because of all the stupid stuff we were going through, and to just like push the event, just felt so good. Like a huge relief that like, oh, I'm still like in this.
Yeah.
Like I can still do something.
Well, let's kind of talk about that. One of the celebrations afterwards. Yeah. The double birds.
Yeah.
I mean,
hearing what happened before that event and all the shit that we were just being put through. And, you know, I was getting so much, like, backlash on Instagram.
Yeah, of course.
You know, like, as much love as there is, there's still, like, a lot of hate out there. So it's kind of just so that.
Yeah.
That's it, you know?
I respect that.
Yeah, I mean like, who doesn't feel good after they give some birds?
Exactly.
You know? You're, like, releasing energy.
Exactly. So, I mean, you know, obviously, let's talk about the one moment, the sprint event.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was when I first heard about you being isolated, and then you know, the Morning Chocolate wrote a story about that, about some of the athletes stepping up to run with you. Talk about that moment. I mean, you talked about. It seemed like there was like two sides. There was like a sisterhood, but then sometimes there were other athletes who didn't feel that way. But then you had these athletes that stepped up, like, you know, we'll run with you.
Yeah.
Talk about that moment. You know.
So I think right before what event was that? 5?
Yeah. Event. No, it was event. No, it was 3.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right before event 2, the pig muscle up event, Dave comes up to me and like, hey, like kind of bad timing, and it wasn't his fault. He was just trying to prepare me, but he was like, hey, you're probably gonna have to run the sprint alone. And I was like, oh my gosh, like why do you have to tell me that right now? I'm trying to get ready for this event. So like, let me focus on this event. And 2, like, that's like the worst event to run alone. Like a sprint, you know, like you totally fuel and use other people to push you. And so I was like, this is going to be shitty. Like, and especially being a 400-meter sprinter in college, like I know how much you use other people. You could easily go out too slow, and that's what I was most scared of. Was just going out too slow, running alone. So I'm warming up, you know, by the start line, I'm warming up. And I was like, hey, I'm running this alone. And I think like 10, 15 minutes before, some volunteer comes up to me and says, hey, I'm going to try to get you a heat. Go stand over here. And I was like, okay. He calls all the girls together and he's like, hey, ladies, like, as you know, like Danielle, her teammates have been exposed to COVID. They've tested positive. We've been testing Danielle all the time. She is planning on running this event alone unless some of you would like to volunteer to run with her. And I mean, immediately, like, Sam volunteers, Laura volunteers, and Thuri. Like, just immediately. Like, it was just so cool because, you know, I was scared I was going to be sitting there in awkward silence, like, who's going to volunteer?
Like,
you know what I mean?
Like being the last person picking kickball or something like that?
It was such that feeling. I was just, like, head down, like, please, like, say something. And it was cool. I forget who said that. I want to say it was Sam, but she was just like, yeah, like, let's get, like, I want to give her the experience of the CrossFit Games. Yeah. Like, nobody wants to do that at home. You know, it's a big part of the CrossFit Games. Yeah. So it's just amazing. You know, there was a ton of girls that didn't care about, you know, they knew I was getting tested. They wanted to give me that opportunity, and I am one of their competitors, so you want to compete with all your competitors. Exactly. You know what I mean? So I was just really happy to even give them a push on that event too, you know, and not be like slow and they'd be like, what a waste of a volunteer.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that.
Oh, you could feel like that.
So, I mean, so there were some good things that came out of your experience. And obviously, you know, that's not where you wanted to finish. And there was some, you know, it was a rough one, but, you know, that's behind us now. So let's talk about this upcoming season. Actually, let's talk about the off season. Obviously, you got an invitation at Rogue. Do you plan on competing at Rogue?
I do, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I want to go.
It's a cool event. I think you'll do really well at that. And then, you know, we have 2 other big events. Is there any plans between Wadapalooza? Are you leaning either way, Wadapalooza or Dubai? Or,
I'm not sure. I think it's just going to depend when that time comes around, how I'm feeling, you know.
But talk about having those options in off season to make some money, or, you know, to actually feel like a professional. Because obviously there's a lot of pushback in terms of, you know, outside of the games, there was really no way to earn any money for an athlete. I mean, you won some money at West Coast, but it was $3,000, you know. And
it's really nice, especially not having to do online qualifiers, because I think that's huge for us as competitors. Like, to do this online qualifiers, it throws off training, and it just like put your body through even more mentally and physically. So that's really nice that we're getting these like automatic invites based on how you place, or it's just fun. I'm glad that they're doing this. I wish, I loved the sanctionals when they had all that, but this is a good opportunity.
Yeah, definitely, and some big prize money out there. And it seems like these organizations they're trying to take care of the athletes.
Yeah,
and I think that's really cool, and it sets up a good good way to head into the season, into the Open. So
it's a good future. It sets up a good future.
Yeah. So obviously, the expectations going into next season. Are there any other goals besides the obvious of whether winning or podium? Is there any other goals you have for the 2022 season in terms of the CrossFit Games?
Not really. I think, especially where we're at within the season, I'm just focusing on what I can do and what I need to get better at.
Yeah.
And that's so far ahead. Anything can happen between now and then. And I think the first goal is to just get to Open or whatever the new plan is for the season. I don't
Hopefully
know.
It's the Open and
the Open
stays the same.
So I think that's just the goal, is getting back in shape and getting fit for the Open.
Yeah. I don't think many people know this, but you have asthma. So talk about like how that affects it. You're obviously an athlete that's known for her engine, and obviously that's what Underdog's program is. Engines win is what I think Justin told me. But talk about having asthma and especially training, how that affects you.
So this year was actually a big not learning curve. You could say that with asthma.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much it did affect me. There's so much more than just breathing.
Sure.
So I was dealing with a lot of like stomach issues.
Okay.
At the games and just training here in Las Vegas, and just having asthma would make my stomach really upset just because I wasn't getting oxygen there.
Makes sense.
So it's like super crazy. So I've been just dealing with that, but it's totally doable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they have medicine out there for a reason. They have inhalers, so.
Yeah. Have you ever had an incident like during an event or like practice where you needed to grab your,
Not really that. Not until the games this year on that swim. Which I didn't realize, but like I was talking to my doctor and she said, the shock of the water, just because it's so much colder than here in Vegas.
Sure.
She said, the shock of the water probably caused you to have that asthma attack.
Yeah.
So. And that was super shitty because I was so emotional about Carrie.
Yeah.
And then the first swim event, and I was so ready to crush it because I'm a great swimmer, and I was really excited to finally get to swim in the games.
Definitely.
And then had an asthma attack the first half of the swim.
Oh wow.
And I was like considering pulling out. But I was just like, oh my gosh, what do I do right now? I couldn't breathe, so I was backstroking, and it was crazy. I've never had something like that bad until the game, so it's just crazy timing, but it's forcing me to manage it better. Yeah.
So it is manageable, and I think that's something that there's people out with asthma who think that won't. Yeah, it's impossible, especially in CrossFit where it's hard to breathe.
Right.
It's like with asthma. I don't have asthma, but I can imagine it's almost like having slam on all the time.
Yeah.
So, what type of advice, would you give for people that suffer from asthma?
There's so many different things there's so many different options on what to do. My option, I have an inhaler, you know what I mean? That's just what I do.
Yeah. And be very fit, too.
Yes, be fit, yeah.
Be fit. Inhaler and be fit.
Yep, that's it. That's all I've been doing lately.
Yeah.
Just talking a lot with my doctor on, things to do, what to do.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I personally, and I know our fans can't wait to see what you have in store this off season and the season. So we can't wait to see you at the top of the leaderboard. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.